Hello, welcome to the Hockey Show. My name is Roy Bellamy, and alongside is David Dwork of the Hockey News. We have Shayna Goldman from The Athletic and the Two Million Men podcast coming up later, and also from the Two Million Men podcast and from Bleacher Report is Sara Civian. She's going to join us this segment to finish out the top five on jerseys. This week we have the top five worst jerseys in the NHL's history. Last week we did top five NHL jerseys that we liked. So we're going to complete that with her. But before we do that, we are going to go into the Panthers' 8-game winning streak. We don't know if it's going to be 9. They play on Thursday, which is the day we're recording this. We're going to fix that one of these days. They're playing the Kings on Thursday, so whatever the result is, hopefully they win. It will be 9 in a row. But for right now, it's 8 in a row. And this was a very, very successful road trip. They swept it. And it seems like Matthew Tkachuk has flipped his switch.
It does. It seems like Matthew Tkachuk and a few guys have turned a corner right now. And, I mean, you look at that road trip and how they get wins in such different ways. Where they go out, they play a really solid game in Arizona to start. Then they go to Vegas. They have to play the last 2 periods without Barkov and Rodriguez. And they played really well in Vegas, earned their first win ever there, which has some kind of like a mental little boost there just because they were 0 for 5 years in Vegas, including the final last year.
0 for forever.
Yeah. Then Colorado, another great team in the West, and you go out and you put 8 goals on Colorado, which is spectacular.
A game that they could have easily lost with the start of the second period, giving up 3 goals like that.
Well, that's the thing. Like, you go up 3-0, then you give up the lead. You end up tied 4-4 in the middle of the game. So to be able to overcome that kind of an adversity was another way that they won a game on this trip. And then the last game in St. Louis, you're tired. It's been a long road trip. You got your backup goalie playing. Your fourth line is the driving line in the fourth period, and they still pull out the win. They're finding different ways to do it, and it's a great thing for the Panthers because they're built to win in different ways.
Panthers second line, Matthew Tkachuk, 4-game goal streak right now, a 6-game point streak for Carter Verhaeghe. The first line, obviously, Sam Reinhart. He also has a 4-game goal streak, and he has 11 goals in 8 games. And Alexander Barkov, throughout this run right now, he's had 3 games in the last couple of weeks where he's had 3 or more assists in a game. The top 6 has been excellent so far.
Yeah, it's almost an embarrassment of riches for the Panthers right now because everybody really is firing on all cylinders in that top 6. And I think it's just a culmination of, look, you've got that second line where Sam Bennett, he was out for the first, maybe half of the first half of the season or whatever it was, the first 15, 20 games.
Yeah.
And, you're coming together now as a group. That line was dominant down the stretch and into the playoffs until Kachuck and Bennett both got hurt late. And now you're seeing it again. And then the top line, it's just Barkov and Reinhart are making beautiful music together, finally. It's took them a few years, but they've figured out how to play with each other on a very successful line. Evan Rodriguez has been quite complimentary in that regard. And, this is a Panthers team that's just pushing right now. And when you think that they're a defensive first team and they're putting up these kind of offensive numbers, that's what scares you when come playoff time.
The Panthers are the best road team in the league right now, and they're practically the best third-period team in the league right now. They have a plus 22 goal differential as of Thursday, and on the road, they're plus 11.
Yeah, I like that. I also like that their goal differential in the first period is so good,
Yeah.
whether it's on the road where it's plus 11 or overall where it's plus 14. It just shows you that this is a team that's starting well. If you think back, not that long ago in Florida Panthers history, the last few years, they had struggles getting off to good starts. They'd fall behind. The comeback cats were a big thing.
Yeah.
Now it's not so much of a problem. They're getting out to early leads, and they're holding leads, and they're winning a lot of games.
And here's a stat that I really did not expect. The Panthers are second in the league in shots on goal for themselves, and they're also second in the league for least amount of shots allowed on goal. And both, by the way, are behind the Carolina Hurricanes. So that I don't know what's going on there. But they're stout defensively, and again, pucks on net.
It's a recipe for disaster for other teams when you think about what the Panthers are doing right now, because they're going to hold you down. They're going to limit your scoring opportunities. They're going to limit your shots. And then they're going to go out and they're going to put high danger chances on you. They're going to score a few goals. That's what Paul Maurice has been trying to do for the last 2 years. The Panthers are all coming together. They've made great signings to complement the style of play. And look, it's all working right now. As somebody who's followed the Panthers for a long time, it frightens me because law of averages, right? But that's what we're getting into. Things are going really good for the Panthers, and hopefully for the sake of the team and for the fan base down here, they stick with it.
Okay, last week we did our top 5 NHL jerseys of all time. Today we're gonna do our top 5 worst NHL jerseys of all time, and we're gonna go with a fashion expert in Sara Civian from the Bleacher Report and the Too Many Men podcast. So I have an outside looking in. I don't know if either one of you have an outside looking in. You have one, David?
I do.
Okay.
The black alternate Islanders jerseys from the early 2010s.
Oh.
I don't know what was up with the colors. It felt very highlighter-ish. I didn't like the font. There was nothing I liked about those jerseys at all.
My outside looking in is the inaugural Columbus Blue Jackets Blue Jacket set. So yeah, the one with the B in the front. And
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Okay. That was
I think I blocked that out of my memory purposely.
Yeah. Sir, I assume that you don't have an outside looking in because when I told you about what we were doing about 5 minutes ago, I told you it was a top 5. Do you have any jerseys that's not on your top 5 that you want to mention?
You know what? I'm well versed in this, so I do have one. I think I go back and forth with this, but the LA Kings Burger King from the 90s.
Mhm.
That's outside looking in for me because I like it. I see what they were going for there, but at the same time, like, it's gross.
Yep. That may or may not be on my list.
Okay. Let's go with number 5, Sarah.
Number 5, I have the Slug from Buffalo from 2006 to 2010. This one gets a worse rep than this one gets a worse rep than it actually is. But at the same time, like, let's not let that distract us from the fact that it is pretty bad. I like the originality. We get points for that, but it has nothing to do with Buffalo Sabres, not the colors. Like, a very weird concept in a weird time.
The Buffa Slug. It was the original colors. It was blue and yellow, or blue and gold, or whatever, coming off of the red and black and silver and white jerseys with the goat head jersey.
Yeah, they needed to just go back to what they did in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, go back to the original.
The original Hasek jerseys, those were gorgeous.
Yeah. Number 5, David.
Number 5 on my list is the Dallas Steerhead alternate jersey. Not a fan.
The one with the actual.
Yeah, with the big bullhead on the front of the. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's very Texas, but did not like
the Mooterus.
That will forever be how I reference it from now on. Thank you, Sarah. That's awesome.
The uterus. My number 5 is the early 2000s Ottawa Senators home jersey. That's the one with the 3D Senator head.
Man, what was that with like the mohawk looking thing on the top?
Yeah, with the mohawk. Yeah, with the mohawk, and it was red with like a white stripe going through like the
Not
diagonal. That was terrible. That was like the peak Daniel Alfredson years. Actually, that was actually, you know what? That was the Stanley Cup final set.
Yeah, when they played
when they beat Buffalo.
When they beat Buffalo, and then they lost to Anaheim.
Anaheim. Yeah. That was bad. Sarah, number 4.
Number 4, this is my favorite jersey of all time, but I acknowledge that it's ugly. The 1996 to 1999 Tampa Bay Lightning thirds. They were like,
oh my God.
Oh, the one with the water.
Are you talking about the one with the lightning bolts on the sleeves? Because that was my next on my list.
Yes, it was very roller hockey-esque,
Yes.
Very Florida hockey. So bad that it's good.
Yep.
It had like waves on it, right?
Yeah.
It was very strange.
Lightning was on it.
I think of like John Cullen, like those, like that 90s era, like Chris Gratton.
Early in Vincent Lecavallier's.
Very early Vinny Lecavalier. Yeah.
Number 4, David.
Number 4 for me is the Ottawa Senators alternate that just said Sens across the chest.
That was terrible.
I don't know what they were thinking with that.
That was, I guess, a time where some of the
They wanted
hockey
more
fans had
letters,
just
I guess. I don't know. Like I get what they were thinking maybe because like the great ones like the Rangers and the Penguins were like diagonal letters, but these were just giant Sens with a weird,
terrible. My number 4 is the actual mid-90s Tampa Bay Lightning set. Like, their inaugural uniforms were weird enough. I'm talking about like the font in the back. It was like illegible. And then they switched the font to like an impact font. And it was gaudy. It was like this big on a jersey that's like this big. It was terrible.
Yeah.
That was like the Darcy Tucker years.
Nice.
Yeah. So,
But
Sarah?
no, not good.
Not good. Sarah, number 3.
Number 3 is another Stars, the 2008 to 2013 Dallas Stars home and away jersey.
That was the one that said Dallas on the actual front?
Yes, the font was kind of not hockey font. It was the lettering I take issue with. The shoulder pads being the Stars green is the only really green we got there. It was just kind of like a football jersey a little bit, and the Stars have some really bad jerseys historically, so that one
Yeah.
made it.
Yeah. Like not even Minnesota. Minnesota was fine, and then they moved down and they just had stars on top of the star.
Yeah, I like the OG North Stars jerseys. Those were cool.
Yeah. Number 3, David.
Number 3 is a combo platter. It is the jersey that Sarah referenced before, the LA King of Hearts jersey that I think the Burger King reference is much better. It's that, and it's also the Mighty Ducks roller hockey looking jerseys from the same time era with like the duck holding the stick on the front.
Right.
And
crashing through the ice.
yeah, whatever it was. It was
flying.
must have been like a roller hockey craze in the 90s, and I was not feeling it.
Thanks, Mike.
I wanted to give him time to explain it. He was on a roll. So
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah,
That's good production value.
Yeah, good job. My number 3 is the mid-90s alternate Vancouver Canucks jerseys.
The reddish one with
Yes, with the skate, and there was a stripe going diagonal through the middle of the jersey, like black and yellow or something like that, going through the middle. It's terrible. Like, it was ugly. I don't know what they were thinking there, and then they promptly changed to the well going through the glacier.
They've had some high highs and some low lows in Vancouver in terms of their jersey choices.
Yeah. Sarah, number 2.
Number 2 is anything from the Ducks, but their current thirds.
Yeah.
I feel like they finally nailed it this time. They got in between the middle of cheesy and boring, and like they can't be the Anaheim Ducks and just have Anaheim Ducks. Like, you need to have the fun duck. That's kind of like the Kachina. I feel like it's very emblematic, but you don't want to go to Dave's point, corny with it or cartoonish. So I think what they're doing now, and they always play well in them, they got to keep that jersey.
So this is basically the inaugural jersey, but in the current orange and black colors.
Yeah, pretty close. I like it too. I'm with Sarah. I like that a lot.
Okay, number 2, David.
Number 2 is the Thrashers. I'll give them this. They had a blue alternate that actually wasn't that bad at the end.
It said Atlanta down one sleeve.
Yeah, but compared to their home and aways, those weird reddish, darkish maroon. I don't know. I'm wearing actually my All-Star shirt from Atlanta in 2008, which I wasn't planning. So that's cool. But I mean, look at these colors. Look, here, I'm going to stand up so you can see it on the camera. This is terrible.
Kind of orange, kind of a brown, kind of a
Right in
red,
here. I don't know.
and a blue.
Like flaming hockey puck of crap, whatever it
A
was.
flaming bird.
Yeah, maybe that's what they were going for. But anyway, the Thrashers' original home and away, no me gusta.
My number 2 is the early 90s Pittsburgh Penguins. That would be the one they won the Stanley Cup in 1991.
The Face-Off from the movie Face-Off?
No.
Like the one with the letters or the one with the logo?
No, no. This is beforehand. This is before they changed into the Flying Penguin going that way.
Oh,
and
the old-looking Penguin.
Yeah, the old.
Oh, you know what?
Is it bad memories from them winning the cup, or do you just genuinely not like
Bad memories from them winning the cup, beating Chicago. And Mario Lemieux. Yeah, bad memories for me. Number 1, Sarah.
My number 1 is the 2008-2011 Ottawa Senators alternate jersey. I think Dave was referencing this. I think it's so boring. I think it looks cheap.
Yep.
Like, this would be if the most boring person in the world designed a jersey. And thirds are supposed to be fun, which is why I like the Lightning when they're so bad, they're good. I like the Ducks when they're so bad, they're good. But like, you can't be bad and boring.
Number 1, David.
My number 1 is the 2009 throwback that Montreal wore.
The one with the leaf?
No, they literally looked like they were just striped from head to toe, like candy canes.
Oh, the candy cane. That did have a leaf on it.
Did it? Yeah. You know what? The jersey did have the leaf, not the maple leaf, the Canadian
But an
leaf.
actual leaf.
But oh my God,
Like the
my
flag,
eyes are
yeah.
hurting just thinking about those jerseys. I don't know how anybody could have played hockey with or against that. There's so much going on.
I know, it was from 1912, and they saved it.
Well, what a better idea. Let's bring something back from 100 years ago, obviously.
I mean, what, the Toronto St. Pat's? Did either one of you like that jersry from the Maple
really.
Leafs? No?
Wasn't
Because
that
it's
like
I think
green?
they tried
It's
something
green.
new.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everybody loves a throwback except when it's terrible. Pretty much. And finally, my number one is the current Pittsburgh Penguins set.
So much Pens hate. I love it.
Because of Sidney Crosby.
Yep.
Yeah, so forget that. David wanted to ask you about something that happened recently regarding Pride jerseys.
Yeah, just something. This happened a few weeks ago, and I completely missed it until recently. But I saw that the Devils found a way to circumvent the NHL's Pride jersey rules by wearing them to the game as opposed to wearing them on the ice for warm-ups. I thought that was brilliant, and I absolutely loved it. And just as the NHL's fashion expert, Sarah, A, what did you think of this? And B, do you think that we're going to see more of teams doing things like this to kind of work around the rules and do what they feel is right?
Well, it's funny that I don't think they have to, because every time they've broken the rules, like the Wild, for example, with Marc-Andre Fleury's helmet, there's been no fine. There's been no repercussions. It was an opportunity for the NHL to flex power that they either are realizing they don't have in the CBA, or that they don't actually want to flex, but they were trying to threaten for some like power trip. It makes no sense, but I think it's really, not to get too inside baseball, but the new NHLPA head, Marty Walsh, was the mayor of Boston. He's really an expert in labor and unions, and I think his impact has really shown with what individual players and teams have done. And I know there have been teams that are, somebody joked about this on Twitter, and it was like, well, how do we make this gayer? That's what they've been trying to do. And it's kind of like sticking it to the league, but there are a lot of people who feel passionate about this cause. And I'm really glad that individual players are buying Pride tape, and they're asking their teams how to incorporate the jersey in ways that, yeah, maybe you don't want to ruffle the league's feathers, but at the same time, these players have had personal grievances with Bettman and with the league for a while now. And it's interesting to see that like they are pressing the issue right now and trying to make a point. I really like that.
It's just kind of nice that we're seeing, because on this topic, we saw so much about the negativity and about what wasn't happening that should have been happening. And now you're kind of see, even on maybe an individual level, but so many voices that are stepping up and saying, no, we need to do what's right. So that's just what I love about it.
McDavid too. McDavid's wearing Pride tape on other teams' Pride nights, and I think that's so crucial.
Yeah, that was actually big, because you're going to need a big star to actually be in the forefront of that, because if you don't, like if you have, I'm not going to say any random scrub, and that would be mean of me to say that, but if you have a big face doing that, then maybe they'll buckle. And that's
when the Tom Brady of the NHL is basically saying, I'm cool with this, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, exactly. On the Too Many Men podcast, and we're going to have Shayna Goldman on, and we got to have Allison on, because I mean, if we're going to have,
we got to complete the trifecta.
Yeah, we got to complete that trifecta, and the Bleacher Report as well. Sara Civian, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sarah.
Anytime. Thanks so much, guys.
All right, it's time for the 10-minute misconduct, and joining us in the penalty box, we have Shayna Goldman from The Athletic and the Too Many Men podcast. We had Sarah on to give us her top 5 worst NHL jerseys of all time. So, and this is coming off of what we did last week with the best NHL jerseys of all time. So, unfortunately, we only have time for one of each for Shayna. So, Shayna, what do you feel is the best NHL jersey of all time?
Oh, that's such a tough one. There's so many good options. I might have to go with like a retro Kings, when it was purple with the gold with the big crown.
Oh, the crown,
logo.
yes.
Oh, Jesus, you scared the hell out of me there. Because both Sarah and David decided to go with the quote-unquote Burger King jerseys that was purple and white and had the little king, the actual king.
Those were okay.
Those were okay. Oh, wow.
They were not bad.
Okay.
I feel like the Kings have had so few bad jerseys, though, honestly.
Fair.
Except for that one. And what do you feel is the worst NHL jersey of all time?
Okay, this is a little recency bias, because I feel like I could pull a little further, but my mind goes to the Buffalo Sabres jerseys a few years ago that literally looked like practice jerseys. They had like gray patches under the arms, and they were terrible. They didn't last, and they were rightfully so. Like, they were maybe the ugliest jerseys I can think of off the top of my head.
So those were the jerseys with the original logo, but had white piping along the sides, and then the patch.
No. It was like more color blocked. It legitimately looked like a practice jersey. It was maybe like 2012. I'm thinking it was after the ones with the logo and the piping. and then they shifted to like a more modern look now.
Oh, okay. Woo. Oh boy. No,
Oh, wait, I think I see what she's talking about.
Oh, really?
Yeah, look up the history of the Buffalo Sabres jersey, and you're gonna find a very ugly one very quickly.
God damn, that is terrible.
Oh boy. If
Yep.
that's the one you're talking about, oof, that's
It
rough.
says Buffalo on top, above the actual logo.
Yep.
Yellow
With like gray on the bottom of the sleeves.
and blue.
Yep, that's
no,
pure practice jersey material.
That is, yeah, that's what you see is like
Whew.
$10.99 at Ross.
That's worse than a practice jersey. Yeah, that's definitely in the clearance section at Ross.
All right, good job for Shayna to pull that one out of the annals of history. That was rough.
Ooh. Oh boy.
It was
Wow.
a bad time. I try not to think about it.
So Shayna, you wrote about Matthew Tkachuk and his slow start to the season prior to the Panthers road trip. What was that, like 35 games or 34 games? He had 5 goals, and it took an own goal for him to flip that switch apparently, and he has scored in 4 straight games. Why don't you give your description of what's going on with Matthew Tkachuk? Did he actually come back from injury too early?
It's possible. That one's really hard to know, especially a broken sternum. We don't see those often in the NHL, so we don't have like a gauge of like how long that actually takes to heal from. And it's totally possible that it messed up his offseason skating routine. And that's why, like, once he got back to game shape, like it took him longer. He didn't have like a standard offseason training. We've seen that with players all around the league forever, basically. So it would make sense, right? But I think it was less on him that he wasn't scoring goals to open the season, because we've always known him to be this dual threat. And for my story, I really did focus on the last 2 seasons, the first year in Florida, the last year in Calgary, because that's the bar he set for himself, right? That's the MVP caliber play we expect from him. So comparing back to those seasons, we expect him to be a really good passer and a dual threat. But you could see this year how much he was shifting to a passing role outright instead of having that dual threat to him. And some of it's because of the players around him. You know, we saw earlier in the season, Carter Verhaeghe's pass rate went down. And Carter Verhaeghe, who we love, right? We don't want to say bad things about Carter Verhaeghe. We love him.
Swaggy.
He's so much fun. He's one of my favorite players to watch on the Panthers. But you could see like he wasn't recovering pucks as much, and he wasn't recovering dump-ins as much. So it was putting more on Kachuck's plate, and I think it was taking away from his shooting game. And the fact that the quality of his shots was slightly less than years past based on where he was taking them. And then we factor in that pre-shot movement that was worse because he wasn't getting set up as much from guys like Bennett and Verhaeghe. I think weighed on his game at 5-on-5, and that kind of explains why he wasn't. And then on the power play, we see him really go into that passing role with Reinhart. Instead of the two of them fighting for those second chance opportunities, Reinhart is the one cashing in on them in the first place, and Kachuck setting him up. That's what we saw. But also along the way, his shot quality was still very good and shot volume was still very good. So that turnaround you had to know was coming. What goes down tends to come up and regress to average, and his shooting percentage is way below average.
And with team health, and you mentioned Sam Bennett, he was not there for the beginning of the season. How did that change things for Matthew Tkachuk tactically?
I would say, so we played a lot with Anton Lundell to start the season, who's a very good player, but he also was having a down year. For that difference of Bennett versus Lundell, I think it's the puck recoveries. I think it's the forechecking. I think it's you need someone to play defense in the offensive zone, essentially, right? Because we always think so much about defenses in your own zone, but recovering pucks and getting possession back or maintaining possession, that's such a key part of it. And I think so much more pressure was on Kachuck this season to do that versus having the support of that line. And that tied with Lundell's slower start, I just think culminated in like a rougher go for Kachuck to open the year.
What's been interesting, Shayna, is that the way that Tkachuk's season has gone, with the production being not what we were used to, there was never any sense of concern or worry from Kachuck, from his teammates, or from Paul Maurice. Everybody's trying to maintain this. No, he's fine. He's still producing for us in other ways. He's still impacting the game positively in other ways. So I found it interesting that even though he wasn't scoring at that level, there's still been no concern about Tkachuk's play from his teammates or his coach.
Yeah. And there honestly shouldn't have been, because of one, everybody knew the injury situation. Two, most people know the law of averages, that a shooting percentage like that should rebound. Like, I know it sounds so simple, and like in hockey, nothing's simple because it's such a chaotic game, but that tends to be the case. Like, we know goal scorers are streaky, yes, but we also know players who are really good at scoring goals tend to finish their chances. If they don't in the beginning, they will at the end. Like, it tends to balance out, and that was the case here. The other part of it was that they were still winning games when he wasn't at his top level. So if there was any concern about it, it would be in the second half. Is he going to find that second gear? And he was showing signs that he was. Like, Was he impacting play as much at 5-on-5 to start this year versus last year? Absolutely not. But you could see him start trending in the right direction. And it started around that time of the road trip. Like you could see those are some of his better games by game score, which combines, traditional and more analytical numbers for a single value. Like it's a nice gut check on what's going on. And you could see those were trending up in the right direction lately.
Okay, so you also wrote about this. A new article that you wrote about this week is the offseason contracts, and the Maple Leafs just extended William Nylander's contract. He now has an 8-year, $92 million extension. So does that set the market this offseason?
It should, right? It's a copycat league. We see this all the time. Anytime that a player signs, it's going to impact other free agents. And I think this year, the big thing is like, this could have been a stack class. Absolutely could have been one of the best free agent classes we've seen in a minute. And how many of those players have signed early? From Matthews to Nylander and Aho, and back on defense, players like Devon Taves. Like, they're not getting to free agency. So if someone does get to free agency, especially if it's someone of Sam Reinhart's caliber, they're probably going to get paid because there's not that many other options. But on the other hand, it kind of sets the bar for a player actually getting paid up to their worth, which we don't see often, right? How often are we like looking at NHL players and going, they're underpaid, the superstars are underpaid, and the depth players are getting more than they're worth? And that happens all the time. So Nylander, in the midst of a career year, is playing up to the value that he wanted to be at, which is that $11 million range. And he actually got that. He forced the Leafs' hand because at that point they could look at it and say, we could overpay him a little bit, potentially overpay him a little bit, because who knows if he's going to keep this level, or we could be without him. And you don't want that. Like, that's going to set you back no matter what you do. So, I think that's going to set a precedent for other teams too, because someone like Reinhart is having a career year that if he says, hey, I might have been worth $8 million last summer, but right now I'm worth 10.5 on average. That's what I want. And he has a good case for it. And I think Nylander kind of opens the door to it. Also, what helps Reinhart's case, I think, too, is not just the goal scoring that's going to push up his value. I think he's rounded out his game so much in Florida, and we're continuing to see him do that, even more this year. So it's that all-around, all-situation threat with the finishing talent that last year he didn't have to start the season. Like, I think it opens the door to him making a lot more money.
See, here, that's interesting because he's obviously, as you just said, he's earning that contract, and he's doing it at the perfect time, a career year. The thing about Reinhart and the Panthers is that they've both kind of maintained this level of where they're negotiating. It hasn't been much secret to it. They've both said for the last maybe year and a half now, they both want to stay together. Reinhart wants to be with the Panthers. The Panthers want to keep Reinhart. Reinhart speaks very highly of Bill Zito, how he traded for him, how he gave him his last contract. And so I wonder, just when we talked about Nylander setting the market, with Reinhart, it almost makes me wonder if he would take like a hometown discount deal, and it does seem like it might be trending in that direction. It also helps that Florida's got the no state income tax. But I just wonder, going into such a unique summer now, but with all the guys that have already signed, how that might throw a wrench into things if that were to be the case.
It could, right? Every team situation is different. And you could also look at it too and look at the Barkov contract. And sometimes, we evaluate contracts looking at the cap, the actual dollars. Sometimes we look at it based on the cap hit percentage. So that changes the conversation a little bit too. But sometimes with star players, they're the bar and nobody exceeds that, right? In Toronto, nobody's going to exceed Austin Matthews, we would expect. In Edmonton, McDavid's the current bar. And maybe Draisaitl beats that in a year, but then, when McDavid's contract's up, you expect him to come right back ahead. Is Barkov the bar in Florida? And if that's the case, it's going to be a deal under market value. If they can get him in under $10 million, it's a good thing. If they can get him in that $8-9 million range, why not? Because this is an all-situation forward who can play center if they need him to. He can play wing if they need him to. He adds to their versatility, and there seems to be something that works out there. But it's going to be interesting to see because he's not the only decision, right? Like, there's also a ton of defensemen coming off the book. So they're going to have to balance that just right, that they kind of need him to take that hometown discount. And it really would make sense if he does. But we'll see what other teams are willing to do if it gets to that point. If that contract isn't done mid-season, does another team set a level that Florida just can't match?
If you're the Florida Panthers, before we get out of here, do you choose Brandon Montour above Sam Reinhart?
No. Nope. Not happening. Brandon Montour had a fantastic year last year. There's no discounting that. He obviously suffered an injury and didn't start the season, so he might be going through that slow start too, but it's not at the level that they need it to be. I think their best method is kind of leaning in on their forwards. That is like the strength that they should have. And diminishing that forward group, I think, will weigh on the defense too. As good of offensive defensemen as they have. And the other thing is we saw them manage with depth defensemen to open the season. I don't mean that makes Montour expendable, but it should make them think a little bit more before they back up $9-10 million for someone who doesn't have that track record of being that high level defenseman. If he can get back to it this year, it's a different conversation, but I still would choose Reinhart above him.
From the Athletic and the Too Many Men podcast. Oh, I love that podcast. Shayna Goldman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Shayna.
Thanks for having me.